All right, man, peace. So for many of you brothers out there who follow the sport of boxing, you'll know that one of the more overwhelming storylines slash narratives over the last year or so has been, when are Terence "Bud" Crawford and Errol "The Truth" Spence going to fight? And I've stated numerous times on this channel that one of the main reasons why Terence Crawford is clearly having an issue finding real opponents to fight is because he made the wrong business decision. And sometimes you could be more trouble than you're worth. Do I believe that Errol Spence and Terence Crawford want to fight each other? Absolutely. But there's no doubt in my mind that Terence Crawford is going to have to face the fact that should they fight, if they ever do fight, especially in light of the fact that Errol Spence has recently suffered a very serious car accident, once they do fight, he's going to have to understand that he will be the B-side, unless when Errol Spence comes back from his injuries, he's not the same fighter anymore and he no longer has his belts. Who knows how long the recovery is going to be from the car accident? It might take over a year. By then, Errol Spence might have to spend his time trying to gather his belts back. So he may no longer be in the position to be the quote-unquote A-side fighter against a Terence "Bud" Crawford. But even with all that, who's to say that whoever it is or whichever fighters there are who end up with those belts are going to be willing to fight Terence Crawford anyway? And that was a very bad strategic move that he made, re-signing with Top Rank. Many people don't like when I say that. I have no idea why. It's very clear that Bob Arum has trouble making fights, period, for Terence Crawford, much less with PBC fighters. It'd be one thing if Terence was making fights with this fight promotion team or that fight promotion team, but he's not getting any fights. And I'm not the only one saying this. Oscar De La Hoya recently said the same thing about Terence Crawford's career. The last time that he was in the ring was against Amir Khan. As we can see here, this was his fight against Benavidez. He has yet to fight a truly competitive welterweight yet. The people keep saying, well, it's because the PBC guys are ducking him. No, the PBC guys are not ducking him. They're fighting one another because everyone knows that they are the cream of the crop in the division. I still have Spence as my 1A right underneath Lomachenko on my boxing pound for pound list, even though I think that Terence Crawford most likely is a better natural athlete than Vasily Lomachenko. His resume is just not impressive at all, whether it's at 135, 140, or 147. It's just that the eye test is unbelievable. He passes all of the eye test prerequisites. Great hand speed, seemingly natural power in either hand, excellent footwork. He does leave his chin up a little bit too much sometimes and his hands down. Against faster fighters, they may be able to capitalize, but we'll see. But he has to do something about his inability to make big fights. And it's not just because everybody's running from him. He has to put himself in an advantageous position so that fighters cannot run from him. At one time, Errol Spence could not get those fights. He was big time by Danny Garcia and Keith Thurman and Sean Porter and these other fighters. But he forced his way in by doing things that nobody else wanted to do. He went to England and fought Kell Brook. Came back to America, was able to fight Mikey Garcia. Next thing you know, he's the big money man. Terence Crawford has to think on that level. He's not thinking on that level. It's not the amateur program where the best fighters are just going to fight the best. You also have to strategically place yourself on the chessboard to where they cannot avoid you. Well, it's very clear that he's starting to get a bit desperate. According to Terence Crawford, he has a fight date in December, but as we're going to see here, he's going to put forth many quote-unquote disrespectful statements about Errol Spence because he knows that Errol Spence is the top dog. Mind you, these statements were made before the news emerged about Errol Spence's car crash. So of course they're going to talk about it. I'm going to chime in.
And I'm glad you're here for this one, Tyra, because it's not UFC, it's boxing.
Still scrapping, though.
It's still scrapping. It's fighting, and it's a fight that the entire world wants to see. If you like combat sports, you want to see this fight go down. Terence Crawford and Errol Spence. Two of the best boxing welterweights in the world, and everybody wants this fight to happen. We actually got Terence on the FaceTime, and we talked to him about the Errol Spence fight, and he had a message at the end for Errol. You got to hear this.
I'm here. Let me check it out.
I've been saying it for I don't know what, a year and a half since I've been at 147. You know, it's crazy how everybody say, oh, well, he don't even have a title yet, and now that I got a title, now it's another excuse. So it seems like it's excuses after excuses after excuses.
Well, brother, like I already stated in my aftermath video for the Errol Spence versus Sean Porter fight, this is a great opportunity for you to fight Sean Porter. He wants a belt, you have one. But from what I understand and from what I was told, Both you and Sean Porter have claimed that you don't want to fight one another because you grew up together through the amateur boxing program. So I hope that that's not going to be your excuse should you be offered that fight or should someone bring it up. I hope that you're just not trying to use Errol Spence's name for clout because you can't make a big fight yourself.
Now he's not worried about it. I honestly believe, when it comes down to him and deep down in his heart, he know what he's up against when he goes against me.
Oh, absolutely. Errol Spence, and of course we're speaking prior to the car accident, he knew that you were going to be a dog and it was going to be a hell of a fight, probably a 50-50 fight, who the hell knows. But at the end of the day, you don't have the ability to dictate anything to him because you can't even make a fight at welterweight. And as of right now, once again, according to Terence Crawford, he has a fight date set for December. So why he's speaking about Errol Spence, I don't know, because even had Errol Spence not gotten into the car accident, they were not going to be fighting in December. Errol Spence just fought in September. So he was going to need at least a month off, and then training camp was going to be 8-9 weeks. So his next fight date was going to be no sooner than late January, early February, which supposedly is when either the Danny Garcia or potentially the Sean Porter rematch was going to take place. Most likely Danny Garcia. Of course, that fight is off now. So they're probably going to set up a tournament where many of these fighters are going to be fighting for Errol Spence's belts. We'll find out.
Errol Spence is sitting at home, in the gym, anywhere, wherever he happens to be right now. What is your message to Errol Spence?
Man, I just tell him, take off them panties and pull his pants up and sign a contract.
Hey, you know who that was for, brothers? That wasn't really for Errol Spence. That was for Terence Crawford's fan base on the internet. And I stated this in the aftermath video that I did for the Errol Spence versus Sean Porter fight. The best thing that happened for every fighter involved, and when I say every fighter involved, I'm talking about all top fighters in the welterweight division, is that Errol Spence decided that he was going to try to dog it out with Sean Porter. Because Sean Porter's stock has risen, Terence Crawford's fan base has risen. A lot of these other top fighters in the welterweight division are now emboldened to try to fight Errol Spence. Of course, now, in the aftermath of Errol Spence's car crash incident, who knows how things are going to turn out for him. But there's no doubt that he became the #1 fighter in the division after that fight, the top dog and a star, because his haters exponentially have increased. And the verbiage from some of these fighters has gotten more vitriolic because they know that he is the #1 guy, he's the guy to shoot for.
Wow. Number one, I heard some kids in the background. You don't want to mess with a dude that's feeding kids. You're taking diapers off the kids.
And when I say that Errol Spence is the #1 guy, the guy to shoot for in the welterweight division, I'm not saying that he's the best fighter. I don't think that he's as skilled as Terence Crawford is, but we're going to find out when they finally get into the ring, hopefully, if they ever do. I'm just saying that it's very clear that all these other fighters know that Errol Spence is the top dog right now, or at least was before the accident, I should say.
But if baby food out their mouth, you might want to watch out. Yeah, you got to do that a little bit. Sometimes it's not enough to say, oh, I want to fight this guy because he's so dope and he's a great fighter. You might say, hey, man, you're being a little bitch right now. Let's go ahead and get this on.
Right.
So I think that's what he's doing.
Yeah, in boxing, like, if people are familiar with this, it's a little bit different. In the UFC, Dana White's the boss and he makes the big fights, which is why we get all the best fights and matchups that you want. In boxing, there are different promoters, and some promoters don't like other promoters, and they don't allow their fighters to fight. So
some promoters like Al Heyman,
right.
Bob Arum.
Al Heyman, Bob Arum are the promoters here.
Well, the issue with Bob Arum is, once again, he has not shown the ability to make big fights, period. Top Rank is pretty much on its last legs. And he's upset with Al Heyman and has been for the last 10 years because Al Heyman has totally shifted the paradigm of what boxing promotion is supposed to be. The Bob Arum Don King paradigm is to pay your fighter a huge check and report that to the public and to the media, and not inform the fighter or anyone else about all the fees and the deductions and how much of a cut Bob Arum is taking or Don King is taking from the check, as well as how much money they're making on the back end through television rights and venues, etc. What Al Heyman has done is he's empowered his fighters by giving them a cut of all of those things, creating a great rapport and understanding the importance of a happy partnership. Bob Arum and Don King, they never worked according to that mentality or that paradigm. Bob Arum comes from a law background. The law background is basically a fancy way of saying the lie background. And we all know Don King was nothing but a two-bit street hustler who found his way into boxing by ingratiating himself with Muhammad Ali. Al Haymon tries to keep things on the up and up with his fighters. Bob Arum did not like that, and thusly he's found himself on the outside looking in. I cannot think of one great fighter who has anything good to say about Bob Arum, who at one time was under top rank, whether it's Oscar De La Hoya, Floyd Mayweather, whoever. Whatever great fighter was at one time under top rank, working for or with Bob Arum, allegedly with Bob Arum, when they eventually departed, they've always had terrible things to say about him. Mikey Garcia as well. I've yet to hear one fighter say anything bad about Al Haymon. Now, Gary Russell says little things here and there, but I believe that he's embittered that Al Haymon will not force Leo Santa Cruz to fight him. That's what he's truly upset about.
They don't like each other. So that's why a lot
They
of
should
people
fight
think-
each other then.
I would love
Have
to
them
see
two
Al.
fight. That way we can get all the boxing fights we want. Have Dana White fight De La Hoya. Have Chatri from 1FC. Have them go in.
First off, Dana White does not want to fight Oscar De La Hoya. That fight will last about 10 seconds. And it only lasts 10 seconds because that's the amount of time the referee would take counting the knockout. Oscar stepping in the ring. Hey, Dana, how you doing? 1, 2, 3. Dana White's being taken to the hospital.
Scott Coker. Hey, I'm the new promoter out here.
Whatever the pay-per-view is, I would buy that to watch like 110-year-old Bob Arum.
Three super fights.
Now, everybody knows you were a great college wrestler, all that, but your hands, your hands are great. You time after time, you have knocked dudes out, put them on their back. Is this something that makes MMA better because we do get all the bomb fights, the best fights, and in boxing we necessarily don't always?
You know,
Well, you get the fight that you want in the UFC because, no disrespect, those fighters, they're nothing but slaves. They get told who they're going to fight, when they're going to fight by Dana White. They have very little to no power.
because our contracts are a little bit different. Like most of the time,
Your contracts are a little bit different, i.e. you have slave contracts.
is kind of hanging side by side with an actual promoter, But a fighter, they're hanging to the organization. So when you sign a contract to fight in the UFC or Bellator or 1FC, they don't want to invest all this money into you and then you just skate and go and jump and do something with another organization. They want to get their return back on their investment. So you can't just bounce around. If I wanted to go and box, if I wanted to go and fight, if I wanted to go back and avenge my loss against Roy McDonald at Bellator, that's something I can't really do right now unless the UFC will get behind it, make a big deal, co-promote, which we've only seen them do that one time, and that was something that had to happen with the Mayweather-McGregor fight. But outside of that, when have we ever seen a co-promotion from the UFC?
Right. Could you see yourself ever taking a boxing match if somebody tied you out? Is that something you want to do?
All I wanted to do was box when that came up. I just started.
You want to box because you want to make boxing money. That's why, brother.
At 23, so I felt I was a little old to start boxing at that age. But since I was a kid, that's the only sport I've ever wanted to do.
Wow.
So most of my training is boxing training.
How good could you have been, Tyrone, if you went into
I
boxing?
still can box right now.
Who would you? Which?
You could box, brother, but if you step into the ring against a professional, you're going to get your ass whooped. No disrespect.
The dream
I want
matchup
Canelo.
boxing.
I want a Canelo. I don't want to go in there fighting boo-boo the fool because if he land a couple shots off on you, then everybody like, oh, Tyron got touched up by this dude that ain't even, 500.
Bro, you need to worry about avenging that loss against Osman. That's what you need to worry about. Don't worry about Canelo. Canelo put you in the hospital for a few months. Just be honest with you.
If you go in there and you risk it all and you let him hang, I want the number.
What
5.
happens if you and Canelo fight? No pride talking here. Real talk. We know if Canelo went into an octagon, you would destroy him.
Yeah.
If you fought Canelo in a boxing ring, what happens?
I mean, number one, I'm not finna sit there and try to win 12 rounds. Let's be real.
He's going for that knockout.
So that means you're going to go for the knockout. So that means you're going to get knocked out. That's what that means, bro. Most likely in less than 1 round.
Yeah, and his defense is crazy. He be slipping uppercut. Who slip an uppercut? Make you look real stupid.
Canelo.
So I'm throwing all unorthodox. I'm coming in. I'm trying to knock him out.
And if you land,
If I land, he going down. That's not even play. It don't matter how many boxing and fights you got, how many MMA stuff. If I hit Canelo with everything that throw some ass on the punch, it's a wrap.
If you say so. Sound like what McGregor said about Mayweather. A lot of these MMA guys, they don't understand the level of power in boxing is just completely different because of how precise they are. Those dudes at the elite level, when they're training for championship level fights, They're hitting a heavy bag for an hour and a half a day, sometimes 2 hours a day. Precision punches. The level of power that a boxer has on his strikes is on a whole different level from an MMA fighter.
And he said, pull his pants up and sign a contract.
Terence getting desperate. He said, take off them panties and pull your pants up and sign the contract, please, because I can't get a fight with anybody else. I'm eager to see who Terence is going to be fighting this December. And just getting back to Errol Spence, hopefully he's able to make a full recovery. So peace.